Hi, I'm Emily Chen. I use she, her pronouns. I am a second generation Taiwanese American. I grew up and live in Newton, Massachusetts, suburb of Boston. I am literally starting grad school in speech language pathology tomorrow, have my first class tomorrow. I also am a classical singer, total ADHD neurodiversity nerd. I have a really sweet dog named Odie. I do Asian American mental health and neurodiversity activism. So that stuff is really important to me.
And I'm so excited to bring Emily into the conversation. Emily, thank you so much for sharing your time and your story with us as we work to increase awareness for ADHD Awareness Month.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
So let's start at the beginning and go back to your own ADHD diagnosis story and where it started and what kind of put the little, inklings in your brain that maybe this was something that was going on with you.
Yeah. I'll start with where it did not start. So my friend in college, as a sophomore, she was on her own ADHD journey and sent me, I think, this New York Times article about like ADHD in women. And I looked at him like, oh, like that must really suck. Like, wow, I can't imagine. And just completely went over my head. Did not register. Went through all of college, not even nothing. Just did not register at all. So college was a mess. Very disorganized. Running around like super frazzled, all that stuff. Not a cool time. Um, and so was not on my radar. And then I graduated college in 2018, and um, I think losing the structure of school and like having a schedule where I had to like be places, that didn't work out so well. I ended up watching YouTube videos on the sofa. Like it was really hard for me to do anything. Um, even just like grocery shopping and like making food for myself and leaving the house. So that was not cool. And so I was taking singing lessons, and there was one lesson where I just showed up and, um, I was teaching piano lessons at the time, and I just start crying in my lesson. And my voice teacher is just like, "Oh goodness gracious! Like, you think maybe you should go to therapy?" Um, and I'm like, "Yes, I will go to therapy." So I found a therapist, and I'm very lucky in that my therapist really quickly caught on to the fact that had some executive dysfunction going on. And so a couple of sessions in, um, she also discovered that my sleep hygiene was abysmal. Um, and so I spent that session being like, wait, so you're not supposed to like read in bed for long periods of time, and bedtimes are real? Really? They're not fake? Um, so that was a shocker. But during this session, just in passing, she said, "Oh, people with ADHD often have sleep problems," and I just completely ignored that. That didn't even like register in my brain. So I got in the car to go home because this is pre-COVID, and was just like la da da da. It's like, wait, why did my therapist say that? And then so I, get home, like Google search ADHD on my phone, like probably landed on like Attitude magazine's like symptom list or something, and was just like went down the list and just like, nah, no, nah. I tried so hard to nope, not me. So nope, didn't register then either. Um, and then later that week, I had another voice lesson. Um, and during this voice lesson, something that came up was like, my voice teacher was like, I know you understand what I'm telling you to do. I know you're understanding it, but like you seem to be having a lot of trouble like actually doing it. And then that just clicked. I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like, the like knowing how to do something, knowing what you're supposed to do and not being able to do it, which is classic ADHD, which I didn't know back then, but I know, but I'm having trouble doing. That clicked because that was the exact same thing my piano professor told me in college. And then so then I was like, "Oh my gosh, it's not the instrument. It's me." 'Cause it's like the same thing was happening on 2 different instruments, voice and piano. And I'm like, "Oh god, it's me." So then I got home, went back to the ADHD symptom list. I'm like, "Okay, Emily, like, be honest with yourself, like, even if it was embarrassing, whatever." Went down like, "Oh my gosh, is that why I, like, lost my planner in my backpack for, like, a whole month, in college? Is that why I, like, lost my earphones, like, blah, blah, blah? Is this why I was always late to class or, like, why I forgot this and blah, blah, blah?" And, like, why I'm like, "Oh my gosh." And just all these moments, I think I just really tried so hard to, like, leave behind me and ignore and just try work harder to not do. It's like, "Oh my god, is this why?" Um, and then so that was like, "Oh gosh, like, is this the cause of, like, the general chaos in my life?" And so that was when it registered, and then I was like, "Okay, like, I need to figure out if I have ADHD," and then I started the process of finding a, clinician to diagnose me.
And how was the process to find a clinician? Were you able to find somebody right away? I know you mentioned it was pre-COVID, so we were
Yes. Yeah.
living normal lives. What was
Yes.
that like for you?
Oh gosh. So I think in the grand scheme of things, it was fairly smooth, but the first neuropsychologist that my therapist recommended, um, was this, like, white dude, and, um, and I just I think I'd just been so overwhelmed growing up just in school in general and stuff that I just couldn't remember anything about my past. Um, and so, like, that kind of went horribly because for that initial appointment, it basically ended up as, "I don't think you have ADHD. I think you just have executive dysfunction." And that just left me a complete wreck because, I was identifying with all the symptoms and stuff, and I just really needed to know. And is just like, "Oh, I don't think so." So I was devastated. And so I did not continue seeing that clinician, because that just left me a huge wreck. So I was like, need to see, like, at least a woman. Um, so my therapist recommended another neuropsychologist, well, a place. And so I did get to see a female neuropsychologist. And I was really, really nervous because I was just like, I think, I was just like, "Oh god, like, do I have ADHD or not?" Because I'm just like, "Oh my god, like, if I don't have it, then, like, what is wrong with me?" Um, and so I was really nervous through that whole thing, but, she did diagnose me with ADHD. I went through the neuropsych testing process, and so yeah, that was at that point, that was, much much better than being told. Oh, also because what helped was, I'd kept journals, um, as a child and as a teenager, and I still do journal. But I had looked at those after I saw the first neuropsych that I went to see, and then so I, like, pulled out my literal documented written history, and so I had more proof now as opposed to literally not being able to remember. It's like, look, guys, like, I can't remember what happened yesterday. Like, what do you expect me to remember from, like, elementary school? So that was helpful, because I think I just growing up, I did hide a lot of my inner experience.
It's really interesting that you kind of got the redo, like, you didn't know you needed to bring your journals or that it would have been helpful. You just went
Yeah.
in because there's really no guidance. And I do wanna
Yeah.
go back to the experience you had and just how important it is for everyone who's seeking help, whether it's mental health related or not, that you feel comfortable with the
Oh,
person you're
yeah.
working with so that you can
Yes.
advocate for yourself. And I want to touch on that
Yeah.
and kind of bring that around to your experiences as an Asian American and
Mhm.
building this level of comfort with talking about it.
Yes.
But I want to talk first about what you've been doing treatment wise. It's been a couple of
Mhm.
years. What did you start right away? So you get your diagnosis, you go home. Was there anything immediate that jumps out, or what have you kind of added in or taken out that's worked?
Yeah. I would say that you know, my kind of like general comprehensive support system really started when it registered that I'm like, oh god, like I might have ADHD. I went into a many months long hyper focus on like devouring anything and everything I could about ADHD and executive function and emotional dysregulation and all that stuff. Just because I wanted to figure out how I could help myself, and also I just find that stuff really interesting. So I was just consuming all of this information and like finding all the strategies I could. And I actually, I think I went with the mindset of no, I don't have like a formal diagnosis, but let me operate by, I think it is very likely I have ADHD. If I use these strategies, like you know, the worst thing that could happen is the strategy doesn't work and I don't use it. Um, so I was playing around with strategies even in the months before I got my diagnosis because that process can take a couple months at least. Um, and so what I started off with, in addition to being in therapy and seeing my therapist who, does understand ADHD, was just actually started, in my most immediate surroundings, like my room. So I would say I did like a major overhaul of my room. And so if I have like shelves here, more shelves over there, like everything's open so I can see it because if I don't see it, like I'll forget and it basically doesn't exist in my mind. Um, like I don't have any like your typical chairs. Like I'm sitting on a piano bench right now. Oh, I use sticky tack, like the blue sticky tack to like just anchor things. That way I don't knock things over as much because so just kind of like those like environmental like and how I organize things just so that I can feel more comfortable in my own space. I don't have to worry about like, knocking things over or losing things. Or I mean, I'll lose things, but at least it'll be somewhere in here and I'll probably see it as opposed to like it's like in a drawer, like hidden away somewhere. I'll find it in like 5 years. Um, so and I think that really helped just like establishing that sense of, my space is good for me. Um, and then once I did get my diagnosis, I started on medication. I'm on Concerta right now, and that and so at that point, actually, I had already made a lot of changes in my room. I had like tightened up my sleep hygiene. I do have a bedtime now. They do exist. Like wow, like amazing miracle. Yeah, it's wow they exist, and melatonin works for me. Um, and so actually, like I had a lot of strategies in place even before I started on medication, and so. But that first time I took Concerta, it was just like the static just like quieted. I'm like, "Oh my god, there's peace in this world." It was it was like I was like, "Oh my gosh," like I thought peace was fake. I thought calm was fake. And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, no, it's just my brain is super ADHD." School had been so stressful for me and this time around I have accommodations in place, and so that is just the level of relief that gives me. It's just, I mean, I never would have imagined that, oh my gosh, it's like possible to feel okay, maybe, um, in school settings. So yeah, there's, I think there's so much worth in if you can find medications that work, like, wow, they can really make a difference, but also, like, just non-medication strategies for your environment or, like, oh my gosh, like, accountability buddies, body doubles work like a charm. So, yeah, just, for I just like testing and seeing what works and what sticks, so, yeah.
I love the fact that before you were even diagnosed, you were like, "I am changing everything, like, I am not
Yep.
waiting," like, I love that. I am working on that. It's a slow, slow process,
Yeah.
mostly because of, like, emotional attachment.
Mhm.
I have to get out of my own way,
Yeah.
but I do like the fact that you're just like, "Yep, nope, going home, gonna
Yep.
reset this."
Yeah.
Let's talk about the relationship that you have with being an Asian American. You
Mhm.
mentioned your second generation, and
Yep.
one of the reasons why I was so excited about doing so many different conversations for the month of
Yeah.
October. I mean, it's 31 days. It gives us the opportunity to talk to people outside of our own bubbles. And there are
Yes.
lots of white men and white women in this space. And I imagine
Yes.
when you started looking online, when you were, when your, therapist had kind of dangled the ADHD worm in front of you,
Yep.
I have to imagine that there weren't a lot of people who looked like you or who live a life like you who were talking about it.
Nope. Nope. So, I mean, I'm really good at finding stuff via Google searches, and even with my very intense Google dives, I couldn't find anybody really. Like, maybe there was, like, not that detailed article here or there, but there's no one with, like, any it just didn't exist. It didn't exist. Like, even on something as basic as anxiety and depression, like, even just basic mental health knowledge, like, that wasn't really out there either, so I was just like, all of this information I was taking in, I had to filter through, like, "Okay, like, here's the information, but, like, does this change? Do I need to tweak it given, you know my, like, Asian American identity and the cultural values and stuff?" And so, um, I mean, I think that was part of why, like, it was so difficult even when I was learning about ADHD and, like, mentally I wasn't in a great space, but it wasn't helped by the fact that, you know, I didn't see anybody who looked like me. And so actually, one of the reasons why I have written the articles I've written, why I have my Disorient YouTube series on Asian American mental health and neurodiversity, is because, like, gosh, I think I could have learned about my ADHD and, anxiety and depression so much earlier and connected to it more and maybe registered that, like, Asian Americans can have ADHD, anxiety, and depression. If in college or maybe even in high school, I'd, like, Google searched it and then found something like, what I've been making, and I think that would have made a huge difference, and what I don't want is to have it's like, okay, I have this idea, I have, like, like, the tech and the I had the time to do it, like, I think the next generation or just people, now can maybe be a little better off in my community, now that this is, like, available online, um, because, yeah, like, yeah, something that does is very apparent to me is that in the, um, ADHD and, like, neurodivergent communities, it is very white dominated, and, and I think it's hard if you are not a part of, a marginalized community to see how those identities might impact the process of getting diagnosed and treated and getting support and stuff. And so, so in that area, like it's hard. But then that's literally for Asian Americans. For us, it's compounded by the fact that in many Asian cultures, like even just talking about your emotions, like, don't even talk about mental illness, like, just talking about your emotions is just like, "Nuh-uh, no." So, like, in Chinese culture, like, saving face is huge, and so, basically, like, you don't want to, like, bring dishonor on your family, you don't wanna disrespect elders and stuff, I mean, the way I took it was just like, "Oh, just don't show my feelings and talk about them ever." And, like, they still did show because like, I have big feelings, right? But then so I just, like, kind of, like, like, um, suppressed as much as I possibly could, and just didn't talk about it. Um, and so, like, we don't really talk about emotions, and, like, in the Asian American communities that um, I've experienced, even talking about like basic mental illness things like anxiety and depression. I know that it's getting better in the pandemic just because, you know, it is so critical in this crazy time to talk about it, but before the pandemic like, whoo, um like yeah, we just didn't talk about anxiety and depression, let alone anything else. Um, and so like all through high school, I didn't know that Asian Americans could have anxiety or depression. Um, and so in college, when I like pew crashed, I had to wrestle a lot with like, is how I'm feeling even legit? Do I even deserve help? Like, and I felt so much shame in even going to the counseling center, for, like, my counseling sessions, like, it's it's just, like, this huge weight of just, like, nobody was looking, it was, like, 9 a.m. on, like, a Tuesday in the middle of nowhere, Indiana, like, no one's looking, but it's just that, like, such a big stigma against mental illness, in the Asian American community. And then on top of that, at least for my parents are immigrants. I think what often happens is that they're just not aware that things like therapy, um, and school accommodations and medication and just care for mental struggles exist. So like. eh, Yeah, so giant stigma, um, lack of awareness of services, and even if they knew about services, there's a huge stigma against help seeking. Again, going back to we need to preserve, save face and preserve our families like honor and stuff. So basically that is like, oh, we don't talk about it, and even if you are struggling, they don't do anything about it. Um, so it makes seeking help hugely difficult.
But you did it.
Yeah, and I did it. I think I mean, I think I kinda got pushed to the point where it's just like, okay, like, either I seek help or I mean, it was like I was in, like, the throes of depression, like, it was not good. So, um Yeah, but I think this happens pretty often where, like, things get to a crisis point and things are much more severe when Asian Americans are finally pushed to the point of, seeking help, and so what I would love to do is to help people become more aware and educated about, what the situation is so that they will seek help earlier and maybe find it more okay to seek help earlier because, it's so much harder to heal and get well again when things have just majorly crashed in your life.
I want to ask about the moment you decided to kind of make your story public in a way that you saw as your kind of your attempt at changing what you saw and what you went through, and working through those feelings of putting something out there that there are people in your bubble who are going
Mhm.
to not be supportive. They might not tell
Yeah.
you, but you know that they're kind of out there. What was it like
Yeah.
working through some of those feelings?
It actually wasn't terribly hard. First of all, it was the pandemic had started, so it's like, if you guys want to give me a hard time, like, good luck because, like, I mean, it's a lot easier to ignore you on, you know, via technology. Like, you can't just show up at my door because, "Hey, do you want COVID?" Like, um, so there's that. I think, you know, I do find it easier to, um, do all of this work online, 'cause, I can't show up too late to things. If it's just like, okay, like, gotta go to my room for this interview. Um, sorry, what was the
You're
question?
just fine. Working through the feelings that you kind of were going through when you decided to make your
Yeah,
story public.
yeah. Yeah, I think I was really lucky in that, so yeah, at the beginning-ish of the pandemic, I had connected to some mostly Boston-based, Asian American women who are very passionate about mental health advocacy. And so they were the ones who encouraged me, who brought up the need for like, oh, like our community really needs like basic mental health information and encouraged me to do this. I'm like, oh my gosh, I have this idea that had been brewing in my mind for many months, but I was like, I don't like, it was just a dream. I didn't think I could do it. But so I got that encouragement from my community, which I think just gave me that sense of support and that really warm push to feel like, hey, I think I can do it. I've been reading about this stuff for forever, and I think I do know what's going on. I have lived experience with it. Um, so so yeah, and I think also like, I do a lot of thinking about this stuff. It's like I understand why many Asian Americans, stigmatize mental illness and want to save face and are so reluctant to seek help. I understand because I was there. I have lived it myself. I have had to work through it. It is so hard. So I don't really have too many, you know, hard feelings. I completely understand where it comes from and why it exists and how strong it is. Um, and so yeah, I think it's that like, no, I understand where they're coming from, but I have a wonderful um, community that supports what I'm doing, and I think that is what made the difference for me to feel like, hey, I feel like I can contribute in this way, um, and yeah, and I think, I have and I had the time and, like, to emotionally and, like, logistically work out the kinks so that I could make these YouTube videos, right? Because, like, I mean, COVID paused everything. I had plenty of time on my hands.
But don't discount the fact that one, you're a performer, and two, you're brave, because anyone who puts something out there that has any vulnerability to it, like, you're working through something. Like,
Yeah.
I just don't want you to discount the fact that, like, you just had time because of COVID,
Yeah,
because,
yeah,
it you're
yeah,
very strong, and you're very, I think, selfless in the sense of you saw what wasn't out there and
Yeah.
you knew that something needed to be done, and there are a lot of people who would just go, "Okay, well, I'll just wait till somebody else comes around and
Yeah.
changes that." So,
Yeah.
I just
Yeah,
wanna make
thank
sure
you.
that you know, like,
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I did it out of necessity too, right? And I guess maybe ADHD impatience. Like I'm just like I'm not waiting for some like I no, like I don't want to leave it up to them. What if they, make some, what if I don't like it? Like so yeah, I think is and I just really don't want, others in my community and especially that next generation to um, you know, hopefully they don't have to go through what I went through. I think it can absolutely be um I think they're at least the suffering that I went through, like if they are in a similar situation, I think something like, their suffering might be reduced if they know that, someone else has gone through similar things, if they have that knowledge and know that they're not alone. So it really did feel like necessity. It's like, okay, like I didn't get that, but if I can help, not have other people go through that, um, that's a huge relief to me. And I think making it also is part of my healing journey. Um, to be like, okay, like, you know, oh, I don't know what the words are
well, it's
for
kinda
it, but
like
like,
your
yeah.
journals, like, it's just you
Yeah.
journaled, but in a very public space.
Yeah. I mean, to be fair, the disorient stuff is scripted. Otherwise, oh my gosh, how many tangents would I go off on? So it's very scripted, to give the information in as, I think, concise and accessible a way as possible. Because I mean, yeah, my other videos on YouTube, I have one where I also COVID, I made a DIY bagpipe out of a trash bag.
That's
So if you
incredible.
want to check that out, yeah.
That is incredible, and that is very ADHD in the middle of COVID. I have a lot of questions, but I'm gonna stay on the path that we're on. I want to ask, when you look back at everything and you can kind of see where ADHD was coming out at different points in life or where you're
Mhm.
struggling with it now, what are some of those kind of negatives? Like we hear so many people talk about all the positives to grasp onto, and I love that. I do. But I also think sometimes it can diminish how hard it is some days to live
Yes.
day to day
Yep.
when everything is working against you.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's one of my big issues with ADHD. I think people in general don't understand what it actually is. It is extremely complex. Look, it took me like 4 months to really feel like I grasp what it is. Executive function is really hard to understand. Um, and so I think my biggest issue is that people don't understand like the kind of like the bigness of ADHD in general. And then therefore they they trivialize its impact on daily life. Like um I mean Russell Barkley's research on how untreated ADHD can literally reduce life expectancy. Like this is serious stuff, and what I wish people could understand more is how serious ADHD is. Um yeah, and so like for me, um my biggest struggles are emotional dysregulation, just, you know, big emotions, intense emotions, sudden emotions, and just, you know, managing that, especially once the medication wears off at night when I'm tired. Um, and also hyper focus. I get really hyper focused on reading and writing, which is great until like I've am not going to the bathroom in a timely manner. I'm not feeding myself in a timely manner, and I have a headache, and just generally not taking care of myself, and I'm just so exhausted. So kind of like that got like stopping a task and taking care of myself. So that is very difficult. Um, I am learning now that I am I just literally just did not know how to like prioritize things. It just I Yeah, I don't know how people do that automatically. Yeah, I'm just learning now, so I couldn't even necessarily describe to you what it actually
It's
is
okay.
because I
I have over a decade on you in age, and I am still to this day, I wake up every morning and I'm like, "Well, what is the most important thing on my list? And what is actually the most important thing on my list?" Not the one I
I
want to do. There's always 2 lists to go through.
Yeah. So I am learning that I don't know how to prioritize, you know. I didn't really see it before, but now I'm starting to see it. I'm like, "Oh gosh, wait, what is it?" And also I think time blindness, like, I don't know what time it is, so it's kind of hard to like manage your time if you don't even know like, how much time is passing or what time it is. So I think yeah, for me those are my main things and I think the hard thing is that all of those things um were very possible for me to hide growing up. Um like I think I just took a bunch of notes and wrote things in my planner and then so it looked to other people like I was organizing my stuff, but actually I was just really really frantically writing anything and everything. Um you know, emotional dysregulation just don't talk about your feelings, which doesn't really do much good in the long run. Um time blindness, like I I'm I've been told that I kind of looked like a headless chicken running around in college. So that clearly didn't work out too well. Um so yeah, and so I think the hard thing was that um it's especially as a growing up as a girl who, you know, had the brains to like show people that she understood what was going on. Like it was very possible to hide it, and so I did, and people believed me. And so and then again, like executive function things are ultimately like invisible. It's behavior. It's like it's not like I wish I had like my executive function isn't working. So yeah, like yeah, ADHD. Yeah, I wish people could recognize how serious ADHD struggles are. Like yes, there's so many moments where it is funny. Um but I think that has to, the kind of the amusement of it all has to be held with that the like the weight of the seriousness because like, you know, um for many people it is a legitimate disability. I think, and I think that's something that people skirt around because of ableism and because it's an invisible disability and because people trivialize ADHD, but it is a legitimate disability. And that's something that I have really had to wrestle with, especially this past year, in the process of seeking accommodations. Is like, do I like, am, is this a disability? Like, do I deserve these
Oh, that
accommodations?
word. I know it's so hard though, isn't it?
Yeah. And so it's like, okay, like, no, it for me it is a disability and going I'm in the process of starting to own that. And it's been really hard, right? Because it is something that our society is like, you know we just stay hush hush about it. You don't talk about those sort of things and then just stigmatizes it even more.
Well, it's also this idea that we live in a one size fits all environment for everything, for
Yep.
work, for school, for relationships, for eating habits. It's just like these are the rules. This is what was set. Doesn't matter that the people who set them no longer live. They're no longer live on earth. They're not alive.
Yeah.
They're long
Yep.
gone, but we're sticking to it, like, it's frustrating.
Yeah. Yeah, and, like, I mean, it's I don't know, I just personally find like, I've also, like, done a lot of learning from the disabled community in general, and it's just I don't know, I just find it really cool all the different possible ways there are to do things um, and kind of, like, universal design and, like, so I find it really cool. I don't see why we have to stick to this one way that doesn't work for so many people, guys, come on, like, have some fun.
But kudos to you for walking yourself through that process and finding yourself at the place where you felt comfortable asking for something that you so deserve, like, everyone deserves to learn, everyone deserves to find a way that works for them, and I think that that's
Yeah.
probably really hard for a lot of people.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean like, if you wanna talk about, like, ableism and, like, institutional, like, one size fits all, like, just talk about, like, academics and school and stuff, like, oh my gosh. I could go on for days about that.
Our next conversation will be about that and then this makeshift DIY bagpipe, but that it will just yeah,
Okay.
it'll just be a
Yeah.
hodgepodge.
Yes.
I always like to end with positive because it's exhausting living with ADHD every single day.
Yes.
I also
Yeah.
struggle with emotional dysregulation, and you're kind of
Mhm.
like, can I do this my entire life? So I always like to switch things around to the positive. When you look at your life and like what you love about it and what you're passionate about, where does the ADHD fit in?
Yeah, I mean, I think anybody who oh gosh, you don't even have to know me. I mean, you can just look at my YouTubes. Like, I love doing so many different things. And I think that's pretty classic ADHD. Um, and so I think, my like zest for like wanting to like write cool stuff and like write songs and sing and learn about mental health and neurodiversity and communication, the disability community, and Asian American identity, um, and like teach and perform and all this stuff. I think having these multiple interests and just being really enthusiastic and excited about it, um, I mean, it's just really cool to know that, hey, I can do all these things. I can like put them together in different ways. And, it's also many different ways I can connect to people. Um, and, like, it's, it's nice that I have all of these different skills that, you know, maybe I don't use it. Maybe I do use it. Maybe I will use it down the road. Um, it's, I think it's given me so many rich opportunities in my life that I'm really grateful that I had, and it's also nice, like, I'm meeting all these people in grad school, um, and it's really cool to have so many different ways to connect to people, um, and so yeah, like, I mean, I hate being bored, oh gosh, like I feel like I'm gonna explode when I'm bored. But luckily, I have lots of different interests that, um, can prevent me from getting too bored. But yeah, I just love being able to kind of, like, have so many different areas and skill sets that I can draw from to create the creations or, whatever, to just create something that like feels right and feels me and really feels like it's meeting the needs of whatever I'm trying to address. And so I think it's like, yeah, like um uh, it's like versatility. I think, and it just makes things exciting and fun.
And looking down the line, obviously grad school, top of mind, but like, what is pushing you forward right now? What is on the horizon that you're excited about or that you're considering? Like, what's down the path that is really kind of getting you out of bed every day?
Yeah. Um, I think it really is kind of like that intersection between Asian Americans and the neurodivergent community. I've met some neurodivergent Asian Americans already, and it is so nice to just learn time and time again that I'm not alone. I actually never was alone. We don't have to be alone if we talk about it and connect. So, whether it's in my speech language pathology realm or beyond, like I've been doing this stuff, apart from SLP land, as a person with this lived experience, as a fellow community member. I think just helping people like me, um, just kind of like just find our voices and like come into ourselves and um, help us learn that you know we can be proud of this our Asian American identity and our neurodivergence, and learn that we have like these things contribute to how we can give to the world. Because I think it just having those things to draw on as life experience and wisdom and just like unique experiences, I think it does offer stuff to the world, and it's just really cool to see, um, like, how things combine and make, like, beautiful, powerful, and just really valuable things. So I'm just really excited to continue, sharing my own story, but seeing, like, how my fellow neurodivergent Asian American peers, kind of like come into ourselves. Because I like, I think I'm across the board, like people of all marginalized identities and like combinations and stuff are starting to speak out more. And so it's really cool to see how um, their presence, our presence, can help shift the narrative in like really wonderful ways.
You mentioned accommodations for school, but I'm curious, when you
Yes.
think of grad school, are there any things you know already you're going to do differently from college now that you know about your ADHD?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's cool because 'cause I'm, like, literally in the process of this, right? I think my main thing, isn't actually even a formal accommodation, it's just letting people know that I have ADHD, that I care about, ADHD and what it entails, and I'm willing to talk about it and let them know, "Hey, I had a terrible experience in college, but I really want to be more open about this and let you know how I'm doing, and I'm happy to talk more." Because I think in college, I was so overburdened by, the executive dysfunction, like chaos everywhere. Gotta like get to class on time. Gotta do my homework. Do homework, 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 homework. Kind of at the expense of everything else. That I didn't even have the bandwidth to let people know that I was feeling like completely frazzled all day, all the time. Which doesn't really help. Like, how is anybody supposed to give you help if they don't even know that you're not doing great? So I think it's just being open and honest about how I'm doing so that they can help me and support me and um, giving them that opportunity to do that. Otherwise I'll just land in the same place of like feeling alone with everything. And that didn't go well.
Well, Emily, it was such a pleasure chatting with you. I got to go back to the bagpipes because it's just like, if if I were to paint a picture of the ADHD brain in the pandemic, now I know that there will be bagpipes involved because it's just a little glimpse
Yeah.
into sometimes the humorous chaos
Yeah.
that our brains take
Yeah.
us to. So,
Yeah, I have a YouTube video of it
okay.
on my YouTube channel, so if you wanna check
Oh,
it
I'm going
out,
to, and I'm gonna link it
yeah,
for
it's
everybody.
yeah, please do. It's pretty fun. It's if I mean, I think we all hopefully you kept your recorders from elementary school because if you have a trash bag and a recorder or 2, like, fun project, guys.
Every parent is gonna be very concerned when they listen to this. Emily, thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for putting yourself out there to help people who, you know, you didn't want them to be in the same situation that you were in,
Yeah.
those few years ago. And so I just thank you because it does matter, and increasing the number of people who come forward, it just helps our neurotypical friends understand how
Yes.
complex this is
Yeah.
and also how overwhelming it can be. And so I just
Yes.
I
Yeah.
I applaud you for putting yourself out there, and then of course, thank you for sharing it with us for ADHD Awareness
Yeah.
Month.
Yeah, thank you for doing this. I'm so excited. So cool, this
Yeah,
project.
I mean, if the bagpipe is your ADHD moment, planning 31 interviews is definitely mine. It's very it tracks, okay? Like if we're gonna go back.
Yes, yeah, totally. I'm like, "Wow, that's a
I know.
lot."
Yes.
Yeah, it'll go great. I'm so excited.
Thank you.